Lindsay Moncrief. I go by she, her pronouns, and I'm the principal here at Gilbert Park.
My name is Katie Wu, and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm a 4th grade teacher at Gilbert Park.
I'm Tarisha Hayes. I go by she, her pronouns, and I am the special ed teacher at Gilbert Park.
My name is Jess Steffen. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm a special education and instructional assistant here at Gilbert Park.
My name is Kaylee O'Neill. I'm a 5th grade teacher at Gilbert Park, and I go by she, her.
I'm Allison Sheffers. I go by she, her, and I'm a language development specialist at Gilbert Park.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here today. We're here to talk about equity and the work that we're doing and how it's showing up here at Gilbert Park. So I'm excited to have this time together with you guys.
So the first question that we talked about is, what does equity mean to us individually? And what I think about when I think about equity is recognizing historically and structurally some ways that places like schools have been set up that oftentimes keep the majority of our students from being able to access materials and access relationships with their teachers. So for me, equity is keeping an eye out for those structures and systems that might be causing harm to our students and naming them. As like a white educator, I have a perspective that is different than the students that I'm interacting with. And I see it as my responsibility to be looking out for some of those old ways of being that schools hang on to that keep us from really engaging with the students that we have.
I think what I also think about when I think equity means to me is really having an inclusive environment for all, where everyone feels safe and heard and seen. I think personally, I'm always discovering and uncovering beliefs and biases that I have, and really trying to think about how do I do differently, knowing that belief is uncovered. And I think also just having open and honest conversations about race here at Gilbert Park, and really being willing to be uncomfortable as well and learn and grow.
I think equity in the classroom looks different in every classroom, because that's kind of the idea of equity, is it looks different in every single circumstance, but the idea is that the kids are still accessing things and they're healthy. Specifically in a classroom, how to foster equity, I think it's almost like a vibe, you know? It's almost like you are safe to feel what you feel, you are safe to think what you think, and we are also safe to accept new ideas. I like to tell my students that differences are refining, and they are not threatening. Whenever we engage with something that is different from me, it's an opportunity to learn. But also that means that who I am, no matter what flavor it may be, can be in the room.
I was thinking about culturally responsive teaching practices and how I see it around our building at Gilbert Park. And the one that I love the most is the greeting students at the door and making sure that we're saying their name correctly. I just really love that, that they're getting greeted in such a special way that I think is important in having an inclusive environment. And then our building each year also focuses on some culturally responsive teaching practices. And the two that we're really working on this year is the visual representation. How does it, the visual representation, the bulletin boards, our curriculum, visuals in your classroom reflect the students' racial and ethnic and cultural backgrounds. So I think that's a work in progress. So we have our Heritage Months, and we're hoping to get parents more involved in that, because I think they have so much to provide and teach us to grow. And then the other one is providing students with criteria and standards for successful task completion. So I think this year we're just really creating a resource bank and actually highlighting teachers that are already doing this practice. So I'm excited to see that grow.
Yeah. I think just to build off that, I wouldn't say this is my absolute favorite part of the day, but one of my favorite parts of the day is dismissal and bus duty because you see everybody. And it's just like there's certain kids who, like, there's some first graders that I have gotten to know just because we've connected during bus duty. But it's what's really cool though is watching like all the other staff also interact with them. And it's just interesting to see how, like, I think a part of equity also is recognizing that we are a team when it comes to achieving equity or building equity, because there are so many different people that relate to so many different kids. And I always like to think that, I always like to say I like to have as many adults in the classroom as possible because I know I can't reach every kid. And so it's just fun during dismissal specifically to watch. Just to watch like different teachers talk with different kids and like interact with them, because we are a team when we do it, because we all give great things to the community, and then also kids pick up on all that good stuff.
What does a race-affirming school environment look like to me? So for me, a race-affirming school environment is one where we are able and willing to talk about race openly and honestly. It's like the opposite of colorblindness. It's one where we understand that talking about race doesn't reinforce racism. It's not talking about racism that does. We have to be willing to listen to and believe in all the differences of our students and staff of color's lived experiences and their racial experiences, because if we don't, then that's both dehumanizing and it's just very naive. If we refuse to see the problem, like, how are we going to fix the problem? If we refuse to talk about the problem, how are we going to come up with solutions to dismantle the problem? So a race-affirming school environment is one where we, like Jess said at the very beginning, we're always willing to examine the power structures outside the classroom and the many ways that they inevitably do creep into our classrooms. And I think finally the most important part of what a race-affirming school environment means is that we celebrate like the joy and the brilliance of our communities of color. I think all too often we focus on like all the damages, experienced by them. We don't talk about like the great strength and resilience and joy and all of that stuff with those communities. So yeah, that's what it is.
That was beautiful.
It was.
Can anyone say anything after that?
Well, all I was thinking of when you're saying that is something that I feel like I check myself on a lot is if the vibe in my classroom feels off. Yeah. Sometimes I ask myself, like, who needs to be celebrated right now? Or maybe needs is the wrong word, but like, where is an opportunity for celebration? And a question that I feel like I try to ask myself frequently is, are my students safe to feel celebrated in this room? Because there's you telling me I did a good job, but then there's me being who I want to be in front of you, and I am safe to be who I am in front of you, but also it's a good time, So, like, just to piggyback off what you were saying, I just think that when we have a race-affirming school, it also means that, like, you're just safe to be you. And as a classroom teacher, I feel like that's a small thing, like, and there's a huge, bigger picture with this, but the small question that I ask myself is, are my kids safe to be celebrated?
How often do I think about what colleagues and students of different races, ethnicities, or cultures experience? Do I think about their school experience? This is heavy. As a Black woman, every minute of the day, I think about race and culture experience and all of that every single day. Every time I'm walking down the hall, when I see a child of color, I'm like looking around, like, do they feel comfortable here? Like, I try to make them feel comfortable with my interactions. It's when they see me in the hall, if they don't know me, if I go through a hall I haven't seen, and they're like, what are you doing here? Like, who are you? So, like, just to know that experience is so important, I try to make myself as big as possible when I'm walking down the hall so that kids can see me and they know that they are seen. And I make sure I speak to all of them and cultures and anything. If I see anything that's different than the majority, then I try to point that out to celebrate it so that they know that it's safe to be celebrated here. Because if I'm thinking about it, and I've been thinking about it my whole life, they're thinking about it.
Mhm.
So, and colleagues, there's not too many of us from different cultures, different races. So we try to like we see each other. So we like, when we're walking down the hall, we like the little smile, a little nod to just know like, I'm here for you. Like, so what people may not know is that we are always thinking about it. There's not a minute of the day that you're not thinking about it, because it's a difference, and it's a big difference, and it's affected. Like, you're affected by all the things that happen in a different way, and you want to feel safe, and you want to make sure you're safe, and you're always hoping that you don't offend someone, or you don't do something wrong, or there's always something you're thinking of. So how often do I think about it? All the time, all day.
Thanks for sharing that. As a language development specialist, we have these amazing multilingual learners here, and we've had some students that are new to the country or new to the school. And so I'm always thinking about, how do I create a safe environment for them? And it could be easy, as easy as like making sure that I check in with them every day and make sure I'm saying their name correctly, a picture schedule. It's all these little things that really kind of lower their affective filter. So I think that's one thing that I always think about, especially as a person coming to a new country, a new environment. So I appreciate that thought.
When I was thinking about this question, I was like, this is one of the probably biggest areas of growth for me in my own equity work, is recognizing that, and this has been a progression. It isn't just a sudden thing, but I think about it so much more than I ever did, especially in these last couple of years. And I'm thinking about it a lot as well. I know not as much as a person of color is, but I recognize that my worldview is so different and my experience is so different. And because we're doing this work and it's so important to us in our school, I am thinking a lot about how each individual child, each family member, each community, and everybody that comes into our school is experiencing it. And I want to listen and watch and hear what they're saying and what they're not saying and what their body language is, and wanting them, how can I, so I think also about our equity lens. It's like that equity lens really coming to true life in our brains all day long. We should be analyzing their experience and what choices we're making, what we're doing, and how that's impacting both negatively and positively. So that is my intention of my actions being received in the way I'm hoping it is? And if it's not, then how can I adjust that, and what can I do differently?
Yeah, I personally am very fascinated and invested in sort of a higher level, macro understanding of equity. I am working as an instructional assistant, but my goal is to become a school social worker, and I'm in grad school now. And I think about equity a lot because of my own racial identity, which is complicated, and my own gender identity, which is, again, complicated. So identity is complicated, and so is navigating structures when we're thinking about equity. And I don't have a lot, I have my individual interactions with specific kids, and I work really hard to consider what thought processes I'm having when I'm interacting with individuals who have a different positionality than I do or have a different identity. But the one thing that I really try to focus on, where I feel like I have power, is when I'm in a conversation or come up against something where maybe there's a rule or an expectation around what I'm supposed to do according to the school or the district. If there's that tension there, right, where I check the vibe and there's tension, then maybe the question becomes it's not what do I need to say or do differently, but what rule needs to be adjusted? What rule that's being broken right now is rooted in the dominant white culture, and if I apply that rule or I hold that rule fast, am I causing harm to this child and that child's family? and the school and thus the community? And a lot of the times the answer is yes. And then what we have to do next is put pressure on the system. And so that's something that I've thought a lot about this year.
I love that. Well said. Love that. We're looking for our systems. We're looking for, yeah. Thank you for adding that on. I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think can be really easy. We talk about like racism or manifestations of anti-Blackness and interpersonal stuff, and those things are all really important, right? Like those are the building blocks. But it's also like so important to remember that like even if we all sat here and like scooped all the rotten stuff out of us and we were just like, all right, like I examined all my biases and I feel pretty good. Like then we look at our data and we see that our Black students are overrepresented in referrals.
Yeah.
So what we have sometimes is racism without racists, and we want to pay attention to that, and we want to interrupt that. So that's an important part of equity for me.
Yeah.
Building on what Stacey was saying about how you've opened up your mind and like you're more aware of other people's experiences more than ever. I think that's a really key part of that, is that we have to believe in like our students. Like they come to us not as like, you know, like they know what it's like to be different in the world, and we have to understand that it's never too early to like talk about race and to acknowledge race, you know, because they know it, they live it out every day. So it's not discounting that experience for sure.
I think that's a perfect segue to our last question, which is like, is how comfortable are we discussing race-related topics with our colleagues and even our students, right? Because they know it, they feel it, they're experiencing it, and how does that show up in our building? And I'm proud of the work that you all have done as our equity team in our professional development with our staff, because I think through those trainings we've had the Courageous Conversations Compass, we've had examining our own beliefs discussions, and while sometimes it feels uncomfortable, everybody's growing, and I know I'm getting better at it, and I'm appreciative of that, and I think we're all getting better at being able to talk about it and work through the discomfort. And I wrote them down because I think that our 4 agreements speak to this really well, which is when we're coming together talking about race and equity, that we stay engaged as best we can, right? But take care of ourselves if we need to. Speak our truth, experience discomfort. And that's where it's like, even if it's uncomfortable, stay engaged, be willing to experience that, and then expect it and accept non-closure. That this is not something that we just complete and we're done with. It's a constant journey and constant learning for all of us. And all of us, myself and everybody even at this table and all our staff, are all in different parts of this journey. And we accept where they are. And one of the things I'm most proud of our staff is we're all on it. Nobody's gotten off of it, even if they've come to discomfort. And so I've been really appreciative of that.
Yeah, I always think about this equity work as a work in progress. Like, I'm always growing, I'm always learning, and I'm learning from my colleagues too. And it's a lot around being curious about some of our beliefs that may have biases with them. I also think about, I'm more willing to talk about race than I was like 5 years ago, you know, because at the beginning it's like, I want to be a part of this work, but I'm like, don't want to say the wrong thing. And now I feel like I'm being more brave, getting out of that comfort zone of mine. And if I do say something that offends, I really appreciate when someone comes to me and tells me, because I learned through that as well. But I don't want to shy away from it as much as I used to, for sure.
How comfortable am I discussing? So I'm very comfortable. Like, I'm Black and I'm proud. So I will talk about it. Like, so we do need to have more conversations with kids to let them know it's not bad. Like, we want to be seen.
Absolutely.
I don't want you to blame me. I want to stand out. But then with my colleagues, I might not be as comfortable, not because I'm not comfortable, and not because I don't want to make people uncomfortable, because I'm okay with making you uncomfortable, because I'm always uncomfortable. So I'm okay with you being uncomfortable. But I feel like people don't always take things in a way that is welcoming and might like shy away from the conversation and feel like that student, like that's bad for us to talk about it. And so I just want that to be like bigger, like to know that colorblind is bad. Like it's bad. And just that simple. Like you need to see people for who they are. So.
Very well said. Very true. We work together, so like we have these conversations with each other all the time. Like there will be times where we'll have an experience, and then we'll go back to the classroom and be like, "Okay, so like something happened. What was it?" And I think for myself, like, am I comfortable having those conversations? I'm very comfortable because I've been having these conversations for a very long time myself. For a number of different reasons. And what I actually find is that I am impatient. My coworkers and colleagues who like seated at this table who are ready and willing and able to have this conversation in a very transparent and honest way, I live for this. Then there, you take another step and you've got people that are like ready and willing, but maybe not able or confused on some pieces or like need a piece of information, and I can have those conversations. And then there are colleagues that I work with who have made it very clear that they don't want to have this conversation, or they don't see this conversation as important, or that race is not the issue. Perhaps it's really about class or some other like socioeconomic status type thing. And I want to have that conversation, and I want to talk about how all those things are connected and reinforcing of each other. But what I have been finding is that there are times when those conversations are not welcome. And I find myself frustrated to no end with those colleagues because what's at stake here are the children that we teach. And a growing edge that I have is meeting people where they're at, right? Like you said 5 years ago, your experience was different.
Right.
Sitting next to me now, I'm like so happy to be with you. 5 years ago, I might have been like, oh my God, Allison. But that's a me thing. I need to figure out how to stay with myself around these conversations and continue to invite people in without being like, oh, forget it, you're lost.
No.
I'm not good at it, but
I appreciate that. I grew up in a culture that embraced color blindness, and so, taking classes and working with all of you, and reading books and stuff, I've grown, and it's a journey. And so when I see someone resistant, sometimes I think, oh, they're hitting up against a biased belief that they didn't recognize before. And actually, I think, wow, what a great opportunity for them to grow too. So, but that
I want to be there. I'm not
Well, I appreciate you for that.
Yes.
Because sometimes it feels like we're making excuses for people. So it's just like, I'm frustrated with you, and it's okay to be frustrated with people. And I feel like it's okay for them to know that you're frustrated with them. Like, you're taking too long. Like, this is like, but okay. But it doesn't have to be a conflict. It's just know that you need to move a little faster.
I think I like that it is just a fact of the matter that this work has been going on for a long, long time. Equity might have only come to David Douglas in however many years, but I mean, like, it's been a long time, right? So we don't need to be in conflict, but I can say that, like, this train is moving. Get on it.
It's like balancing this, like, there's a sense of urgency for this work, and also trying to meet the people where they're at, and there's this balance sometimes. And I hear you. I don't want to make excuses for others. So, like, how do you intertwine those two things?
Also, because what happens when we isolate people and we're just like, fine, forget you, then those people dig deeper into that.
Right. Because then they think it's not for them.
Right.
Yeah, and I feel like something I've grown more, I don't know the word, comfortable in, maybe I have words, I have the vocabulary for it now, is understanding the types of discomfort. You know, like there's the, this is new for me, and then there's the discomfort of, oh, we're talking about this again, and then just like the different stages of discomfort, if that's how to put it, because this work takes a long time, and it's thorough, and it's not always pretty. Very rarely pretty. but like, and just knowing that like growth isn't always pretty, but that's the point. The point is to go through the growing pains, and the point is to like grow a little bit and then realize, oh, you forgot this part over here, and we're gonna grow here now. But every time there is discomfort. Yeah, I think being able to recognize types of discomfort as also a sign of growth is a positive part of the hard work that I've come to find it to be. But and also just recognizing that this work is exhausting. It's hard and it's exhausting, but it's definitely worth it, and it's, we're getting there. Kind of.
I think there's like an endpoint, you know, it's ongoing. There's no like one PD you can do and you're done. It's like for everybody, you know, even for those of us who feel like they are, you know, at the other side, you know, like you have to constantly check yourself, for sure.
I feel like that's that expanding that equity lens, you know, and so I think like each year I get really more deep in this work. I'm expanding my equity lens.
We believe in equity.